Welcome to the AI Applied Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Grennan, and every week we dive into news, tools, ways of applying AI to your career and life. And the reason I am not letting Jaeden introduce himself today is that we are doing an interview today with the legendary Jaeden Schafer himself. Jaeden, welcome to your podcast.
I am thrilled to be on here and excited.
Listen, I really do want to talk to you. It's funny. So, Jaeden and I have some really cool interviews lined up for the next month. We'll sort of, we'll roll those out, but we're meeting some amazing people and we're going to be talking to some amazing people. But today, it's funny, Jaeden has been the voice in my ears since probably back in maybe January, maybe February, I would say, when I first started to get into this and I looked up, is there like a Chat GPT podcast? And up comes Jaeden's mug on my Apple podcast, right? And I opened it up, and right away I like started listening to these like 11-minute podcasts, and I was like, man, this guy is like really good. Like he really knows his stuff and everything like that. But before I sort of even get into that world, it's funny, like Jaeden, I just hear like bits and pieces of Jaeden's life because you hear, the promos on the show are like for this thing called like AI Box, or a few months ago it was like Self Pause, and then you realize like, oh, that's also Jaeden's stuff. And let me just say this, Jaeden, before I kind of like start asking you some stuff. I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll just say this. My, kind of day job is I'm dean of MBA students at NYU Stern School of Business. It's a, super competitive school, phenomenal school. So I do know a little bit about entrepreneurship. I've sort of seen it up close. And I am just like super, super impressed with how you think about entrepreneurship. Like, because you do it in a lot of different ways. And my take on it is that you are just hyper focused on execution, which is, I think, really, really rare in the entrepreneurship space. Like most of the entrepreneurs I meet are sort of like, hey, this is my big idea. And you're like, no, man, here's the idea. Let's go. Here's my idea. Let's go. Anyway, I'm not trying to interview myself, Jaeden, but I just want to sort of like kick it off with asking you, take us back to college, right? Because I think that that's when sort of like some of this journey started, or if there's a part before that, over to you.
Yeah, I think, well, on the entrepreneur side and taking it back to college, I was actually just down memory lane the other day. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs that start a lot of businesses, one of the best ways to go back down memory lane is to look at their GoDaddy account where or any your domain registrar and see all of the different URLs you've ever registered. It's like it was like crazy. I was looking the other day. I think it's like 20 websites over the last like 7 years that I've like registered for like projects. Some of them I was gonna do, didn't do. Some of them I tried, they didn't work. Some of them I tried that did work. Like in college, I think I started like 11 different companies. I was studying marketing and I was doing like a certificate in entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship was really what I was like passionate about and going into. And so, yeah, I was always just spinning up new ideas. Probably have like a little bit of like shiny object syndrome, like the newest thing I was always trying. But yeah, I while at college, it really was kind of the start for me of the whole podcast sphere. I hosted I went to school at BYU Hawaii, and they have an entrepreneurship department there that's like absolutely awesome. They essentially every week they bring in like a big entrepreneur that started some company, and they give like a 1 hour speech, or kind of have like a 1 hour class on talking about how they did it, right? To kind of like a TED, they're like TED Talk essentially. And so my job at the time was taking everyone that came and gave those speeches, and I did a podcast for the entrepreneurship department. And afterwards I would like interview them, and they kind of had a podcast. So that's where I really got started with podcasting. It was a ton of fun. It's kind of a funny story. I originally actually started this podcast as a co-host with another guy there. And I can't remember what happened. He had like some sort of medical thing that like he ended up being like super dizzy and not having a lot of energy. And like literally we're supposed to co-host this podcast. We show up for the first one, record it together. It was great. The second one, I'm like texting him like, hey, I'm here in the room with like the person. Are you coming? And he just like never responded. So I just did the interview. Drops off the face of the earth for like 3 weeks. What? So I'm just like scheduling all the interviews, filming everything, doing them. I don't know what happened to this guy. It was like one of my friends. So like I usually, was like pretty close contact with him. No idea what happened to him. And then like Yeah, it was funny. Then like, a month later, he's like, "Hey, so how's the podcast?" I'm like, "Dude, where have you been?" He's like, "Yeah, sorry, like I had something, like, bro, I couldn't even walk up the stairs, man. It was crazy." Anyways, so that's kind of where my solo podcasting career got kicked off. It was a ton of fun, and I dabbled with essentially. So I taught advanced digital marketing at university there after I graduated. I was supposed to have a master's degree, and technically, because there's a 400 level class, and I was all lined up to teach the class, and then at the last minute, the dean of the school was like, "Hey, you can't teach it because you have a master's degree." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then so one of the other entrepreneurship professors there that has a master's degree technically was co-teaching it with me, but I would just go and teach, and he was just on the paperwork or whatever. So taught that. It was a ton of fun. And yeah, then after that, went and worked in marketing at a old crusty 100-year-old company, and it's not that bad. It was actually a lot of fun. And
But wait,
then
hold on. Let's take you back. I don't want to get you out of college yet. I want to hear
all
like
right, all
young
right.
Jaeden. Give us back, like put us in like the brain of 18-year-old Jaeden. Were you already thinking like what was the passion? Was the passion starting new things? Was it entrepreneurship? Did you have sort of a sense of like, oh, I'd love to do kind of podcasting? It sounds like podcasting was almost an accident that came out of sort of another passion. But like, what was sort of the original passion for you?
Yeah, so really for me, it was marketing. Growing up, I was homeschooled my whole life, and so when I was like 14, 15, my dad's an entrepreneur. He owns Cheap Travel. It's a big travel company. It started out of Canada. It was like one of the first travel agencies to go online in Canada back in the day. And so growing up, my education, because you can kind of pick what you want to do when
Mhm.
you're doing the home education thing, I would just go to the office with him every day, listen to all of his calls. Eventually, I went and I built into all of his like website work, all of his marketing stuff. I would manage all of his like he had like teams and agencies that would run all of his ad campaigns and stuff, like a couple $100,000 a month of like ad spend he was doing. And I would just manage them all. I'd do all the meetings with him. He started being like, "Hey, come to the meeting." And then like, he's like, "Oh, I'm too busy. Can you just like do the meeting for me?" I'm like, 14, 15-year-old myself, like, "Yeah, sure." So, ran the meetings, did all that. And so then when I kind of went to college, I studied marketing, but I was like, "Oh yeah, this," like, it was just very intuitive. I was like, "Yeah, I kind of already know what like the corporate marketing thing looks like. I already know what works." I'm like already trying to figure out the growth hacks to like make his website rank better. So to me, it was a passion for marketing. And that's kind of how like I was like podcasting was like, "Oh yeah, it's like another distribution channel for content." So like, sure, I'll try that. And I did a lot of other things as well at the same
But
time.
this is where I get so curious about this too, because if you like was market, did it feel like market, like would you have been just as happy sort of like marketing for like a big company that was like, hey, Jaeden, we see you're like this amazing prodigy, come and work for, name your dream company or whatever and market that. Like, was that the drive, or was your drive more like, I want to have my own thing, have control. I've already seen how to do it. Like, what was your drive there?
Yeah, I think it was entrepreneurship for sure, and it was um not so much like a big like marketing for Google or something. It was like, and I mean, I did like at some point in college, I was like, "Oh, maybe I want to get a job at Google," and kind of did some internships for some people that worked there and to try to get into different companies like that. But at the end of the day, what I had grown up doing was like it was really like taking a small company and making it a big company, and I'd done that a couple times, like growing up, my dad had different like departments in his travel company that were like totally fresh. It's like, "Hey, I have an idea. We're going to do this, market this thing." And so like I kind of took it, made the first website, made all the ad campaigns, and we like scaled it up to to doing like over $1 million in revenue. And I was like 15-year-old myself, kind of like helping with that process, and it was a ton of fun. And that's really what I was passionate about. It was like taking something from the beginning and then just like trying to scale it up as big as you could with different marketing, using growth hacks and figuring out things that other people weren't doing, because that's kind of what you have to do when you're starting out small. And so yeah, I think that was kind of the motivation for me. And I was like, I want to do this for myself. So in college, I started, right? Like, of course, part of it was being Canadian. When you go to an American school, a lot of my friends got what's called FAFSA, which is essentially like, scholarships from the government or whatever, government grant kind of thing. And being Canadian, you don't get any of those government grants. So like I really had to pay my way. I did the whole thing without student loans, and that was kind of my job. So it's all doing like businesses and side hustles while going to college at the same time, which I'm not sure how legal all of it was because I wasn't like a, citizen or anything of the US, but, under the table cash, doing whatever I could. But yeah, that was kind of the drive that started
It's
that.
so it's amazing. So then, I mean, so let's get into the AI applied part of this, right? Because this is what's so fascinating to me is that like you're sort of figuring this all out. You have sort of kind of some expertise in marketing just by the fact that you're like watching it, you're like driven by it, everything like that. So when I first hear about Jaeden Schafer, it's like February. For all I know, you are like, the world's number one machine learning guru kind of thing, right? But like somehow you moved from there. And I think were you already doing self pause at the time? So again, I'm talking about like this year back in like kind of
Mhm.
February. Put us there where Connor walks into the scene of, obviously we didn't know each other, but I was like listening to yourself. Like, where were you at that stage?
Yeah. So one thing one like takeaway I do want to say based off of kind of my
Yeah.
backstory that I think is really applicable when you are looking to apply AI into whatever your job is and whatever your function is, something that has helped me a lot back then and today, always look for the growth hacks. Like when I started this podcast, when I started self pause, anything I'm doing, I was often like with self pause, I used AI heavily in kind of growth hacking and growing that company. Even before ChatGPT came out, there's a bunch of AI tools. But like, look at what your current job is, and look at ways that you can quote unquote growth hack. How can you get the most bang for the least input, essentially, and with using AI tools to kind of scale up what you do. So that's my like one big takeaway from that, I would say. But yeah, earlier this year, essentially self pause. I started maybe like I ran for around 3 years after I quit my job working in marketing. I worked in corporate marketing and whatnot. And I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun, great people. But like I kind of decided I wanted to do my own thing. So I started Self Pause, which is a software company. It's now the number one AI life coach and, scaled it to over 120,000 users. And really like seeing that and how AI was being super, and especially like when when you're looking at something like AI life coaching, like we worked with certified life coaches to kind of develop the tools around that and whatnot, and seeing how it was helping people and the positive feedback we're getting there, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so many incredible use cases for AI. Um, and so I then at the beginning of this year, I started a company called AI Box, which of course I talk about on my podcast a ton, a no code AI app builder and marketplace. And that's when I kind of started my podcast AI Chat, which really exploded. It was essentially like I talked to like some investors and they're like, yeah, I love what you're doing. If you want to really take this to the next level and get like a lot of investors, you need to have like, you need to be famous on Twitter. That's what they told me. And
Mhm.
I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like I'm not gonna go and just get famous on Twitter. But what I did know how to do, what I didn't know how to growth hack, my one angle was I knew how the whole podcasting thing worked. And from Self Pause, I had done a bunch of AI podcasts, which were not about AI. They were written and spoken by AI. And I'd use that as like a marketing tool. But because I experimented in this area and knew exactly how to do that, I was like, okay, well, I'll start a podcast about AI, used all of my same strategies, and AI chat was born and kind of exploded onto the scenes. And I think one thing that set it apart and made it interesting was I didn't really come from the perspective of like, I am a machine learning expert or guru. It was really like, I'm a software guy. I build software in
Mhm.
companies. I'm always looking at growth hacking, but like just like everyone listening, I'm learning this stuff. And so it was kind of like me sharing my journey, learning about different ways to apply AI into what I was seeing, into what I was building, into different job functions, and I think that's what resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah, this is what I love about this, right? And this is what I love about your story too, is that, I think a lot of times things can just feel impossible, right? You look at like Steve Jobs' life, you're like, well, I would never be like that, or I would never be like, but like you just come across as extremely relatable. And I love that you say growth hacks. And I've heard you talk about this before about just like, unlocking the algorithms. And it sounded like what you were saying on, when I've heard you speak about this before was it's not like finding the perfect idea. Like you have to know what you're going for and then just get ready to iterate, like no pride attached to it, anything like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the concept of growth hacking really is like growth being, I call it growth hacking, obviously, because my thing is like I'm a software CEO. So how do you hack and grow your software and your user base? That's my concept. But I
Mhm.
think like take that to job functions, take that to your career, take that to your life. what like grow, what is the output that you're wishing to achieve? Is it more users? Is it more revenue in your department? Is it less support tickets? Is it like whatever your grow is? What are the hacks? What are the techniques to achieve that? And specifically, like, what are other people not thinking about? What are unique ways that there's not a lot of competition to achieve what you're trying to achieve? It's a framework and a mindset that I believe can be applied to everything. And especially with AI tools today, they are the ultimate growth hack. They're the ultimate hack where you can take these tools and automate so much of what you do to give yourself more time to work on what's important, and the goal being work on what's important to achieve whatever your goal is in your job, in your career, in your business, whatever that hack looks like.
Yeah, so I love that, and it's funny. So what I hear you saying there too is so interesting, right? It's like, so I have like I'm a background in it as a writer, right? And like, so I've read like Stephen King, like him or don't like him, but he has a phenomenal book on writing. And the thing that always, there's a lot of took away from it, obviously, but he always has this expression called "kill your darlings," which is like when I was like writing this book, like I would fall in love with like this chapter or this paragraph, or whatever, because I'd like worked. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Everybody's gonna love this. And then your editor comes along, they're like, that's not good. Or in my case, my wife and my editor were like, that's not good. I'm like, what do they know? Do you know what I mean? Like, and I was just falling in love with it. And like Stephen King would say, like his editor was like, you're going to have to get like very comfortable with like killing the things that you think are amazing. And I just like love how you, like when I've sort of like watched your career, and I may have this wrong, so correct me, but like, what AI does so well is it allows you to iterate. And I think that sort of like you have to combine when we have AI applied, right? The reason you and I started this, right? We were like, gosh, there's so many tools out there. There's so much stuff out there. Like, but how do people actually use it? And I think what you and I kind of said, and first of all, I was super attracted to AI box, and I want to hear you talk about that, because like when you said what that was, I was like, that's exactly what in my dreams I would have like had somebody start. I wouldn't want to start it, but somebody started. But it's the combination. It's AI applied, but remember that it's not just a tool. Like a tool is not going to save you. Like a treadmill, right, is not going to get you into shape. It's the behavior. And what I'm sort of sensing from your behavior combined with AI is like, don't fall in love with things. Like, get the algorithm. Like, see, like watch. Just like use the data to sort of like guide. If you really intend on being successful, if you just want a passion project, go drill it into the ground. But it looks like you are great at iterating, using these AI tools, and then letting it go and finding algorithms and things like that. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know everyone's got different strategies when they're creating stuff, but really my theory here in the world of algorithms and in the world of all of these AI tools, essentially what it allows us to do is create 10 times as many outputs. And a lot of people will be like, oh man, well, if you have all this AI creating, like, let's say, for example, you could create 10 times as many blog posts. It's like, well, there's going to be way more spam. What I really kind of view this as is use AI to 10x your outputs in whatever way you can. And then look at which of those 10 performed the best or got you the best result, the most users, the most revenue, the most, whatever your goal is, and double down on what works. And so something that you and probably a lot of people that listen to the AI chat podcast, my main podcast, will notice is I produce like a ton of content. Like sometimes it's like 3, 5, I've done 10 episodes in one day before. Sometimes there's a ton of news. Sometimes I'm like, oh, to kind of be fun to just see if I can do that many episodes. I mean, there's always content to cover. But the reason that I put out so much content is I'm constantly, well, first off, there's a lot happening and people like the content and it's quick and snappy. So it's like people consume it, but I put out all the content and then I look at what content performs the best, what resonates with most of the people. With podcasts, you can look at similar to like a YouTube video, you can look at how much of an episode someone listens to, when they drop off, when they come back. So like if there's an ad in there, how they kind of skip it. Like you can see all these analytics. And for me, it's really interesting to, before AI and AI tools, I use AI tools for so much of what I do for podcasting and whatnot. Before that, I maybe, if it was really like my full-time job, probably could get out like a podcast episode a day. That'd be like, a podcaster. I'm able to do like 3 to 10 podcast episodes a day because I'm using these AI tools and I'm constantly looking at what performs the best and improving the quality of what I'm creating to be, more what people want in in this right fashion. And then I think that has really kind of spurred the growth of that podcast in particular.
So I love that, because I think a lot of people who are, I'm sure there's people out there who like are thinking maybe I'll start a podcast or something like that. And what I love is that sometimes it's hard. You hear like, oh, Jaeden does that, but there was a time where you were just learning too. Do you know what I mean? Like, so don't compare yourself to like where Jaeden is now with like 10 episodes a day. It's like compare yourself to where he started and then follow that path up. And again, don't fall in love with things, but just like iterate, see what works and use the data. And with that though, I want to pivot over to AI box, because when I first heard the idea for this, I was like, is that for real? Like, that's really cool. And then I just heard you sort of talking about how you're raising capital and you're raising it from listeners. And it's just like, there's a lot of excitement around it. But like, can you tell like everybody sort of just like how you got to AI box? Like I'm sure you have a good elevator pitch behind it. Tell us that. And I just want to talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, so essentially at the beginning of the year, I mean, it's really what kind of spurred me doing all these podcasts and everything else. But at the beginning of the year, after kind of seeing how much AI was helping people with self-pause, my wife and I were sitting there, and we literally, because we'd done self-pause together, and we were literally coming up with like 10 new AI use cases every day. ChatGPT had just come out, and we're like, oh my gosh, you could do this and this and this. And I was talking to my friend Ben Pearson, who's now our CTO on AI Box, and I was like, hey, like he's a real technical guy, and 10 years developing and stuff. I'm like, hey, like if I wanted to do this, like how would I do this? And I was like sending him like 10 ideas a day. Poor guy, he was getting like so harassed. And eventually we came to the conclusion, we had so many ideas. We're like, there's no way we can pull off all of these different AI use cases and workflows and tools. We're like, we really just need to build a platform for creators or anyone to be able to go and automate their workflows with AI, put their prompts in, chain together the AI models they want, and create their own tools. And the vision behind it really was similar to the way that YouTube really kind of democratized knowledge sharing, right? With YouTube, you got like a plumber in Ohio and an electrician in Detroit and a lawyer in Miami, like whatever your business is, people are on there sharing their knowledge for their specific area of expertise. And, they're monetizing it through YouTube ad revenue. And we're like, there's the same opportunity, right? In the first 3 months, ChatGPT got 100 million users. And these are 100 million people from all different backgrounds, niches, and using ChatGPT and creating their custom prompts and automating their workflows and using AI to get stuff done. But there's no way for them to actually monetize those prompts and monetize those workflows. And so that's essentially what we're building with AI Box, is a way for anyone in the world to monetize the workflows and the AI prompts and their expertise in kind of the AI space.
Yeah, so this is what I love about it, because this is how you and I sort of connected around this stuff too, right? Because I heard that idea, and I'm like, that's amazing, because my big thing, and we've talked about this before, is that like there's no user manual for ChatGPT and everything like that, right? And why is that? Is because everybody has their own way of doing things, and then you're watching like the aha moments of people, and they're like, oh, I bet I could use it to do that. But like, and there's a lot of people who are now sort of seeing, oh my gosh, like I could actually just use this little tool here to 10x myself and like have like 10 more of me doing this. Like truly, like you can do that, and to give people sort of like a platform. So when you kind of think about it, is it like the ease of use? Is it the flexibility of it? Like what do you sort of see at the heart of all this thing?
Yeah, I think that one of the core things for me is just like I want to use it so bad. So we have like a working, essentially this year we built like a fully working demo of the app builder side. And so I have like virtual assistants that do like different aspects of different businesses that I work on. And I've essentially like built them little AI boxes that they can go in. It's not like available to the public, so it's pretty much just me and my like team that can use it. But they go in and they use it to like create newsletters and articles and like all sorts of like different things that we work on. And just seeing that, I think no matter what someone's like workflow is, it just saves them the time. You don't want to copy and paste. You want to have like 100 different logins for 100 different AI platforms and have to learn them all. Like if you can just have one central place, one account, one credit card on file, and be able to access all the AI tools, I think it saves you a ton of time. And so I think that's one thing people love a lot about it. And then just being able to like really be like a glue layer tool that links all of these AI models together, so you don't have to manually copy and paste and move between stuff and automatically post and all that kind of stuff.
It's phenomenal. Like, so in business school, like we hear like it's the team above everything else. Like first you look at the team, and I'm just like, obviously, like you and I paired up because I was just super impressed with what you did, and I just think, I don't know, I just think it's awesome. So how can people? This is not supposed to be like a long ad. We were a million things we were talking about, but since we're here, how could people sort of like get involved with that?
Yeah, I mean, if people are interested, you can go to aibox.ai and get on the wait list for it. And then we also did just launch a crowdfunding round on earlier this week. So if you're interested in investing in the platform, we're essentially doing a thing for the first $250,000 invested. We have a discounted valuation. I'm pretty much just telling people that listen to my podcast and are kind of in some of my communities about that to, I really want like the community to be invested. And it from the beginning, I think like how cool would it have been if when OpenAI came out, there was like some way that I could have gotten in at the beginning, because it's something that like I'm promoting OpenAI every single day on my podcast. And I'm like, that would have been really cool if I had, some sort of stake in that. So that's kind of the concept behind that. And then of course we'll talk to VCs and bigger angels and whatnot in the future. But yeah, that's what we're doing. I could leave a link in the description, but it's pretty much on Republic. So it's republic.com/AI-box for the crowdfunding. And I think we're at about $195,000 that's
Oh, wow.
been invested or committed so far on that. So for kind of the early bird, that's what we're filling up, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're excited.
Awesome. Well, Jaeden, you and I are going to have a lot more time together, and everybody's going to hear the sound of our voice a lot. But by the way, could have gotten into all your crazy backstory of like, sailing, across the planet or whatever, all this kind of stuff. I won't do this. Maybe in another episode. Jaeden, thank you for joining me on the podcast that you yourself created. Thank you to our listeners. Thanks for spending some time with us here on AI Applied. We love doing this show, and we love doing it for you, and we love hanging out with you guys and sharing what we know about this and helping you apply it to your lives and to your careers. So stay tuned for the next episode. And with that, we'll see you next time.